Keith is the person that got the energy and the idea and the heart to start Leading with Power, which is in several cities now. And it's impacting men across the states, you guys. And I'm so thankful that you're here and you're going to have an opportunity to hear Keith. So let's give it up for our one and only Keith Tompkins.
Thank you. Wow. Hot mic. I couldn't be more excited to be here today, and it's just a thrill. And as I get going, you'll see the irony of me sitting in a bar stool telling this story. If I could retitle today's message, it would be Unleash the Elephants. And the legend is that elephants, when they're young, are tamed and controlled by tying a rope around their leg, tying the other end to a stake in the ground. And at first the elephant will try to push against that, test its limits, but it very quickly learns its distance and its world and its circumference. And even though it grows to an adult elephant and has all the power in the world to pull itself free, it does not. And I think you'll understand the impact of that story with a phrase that I believe with all my heart, and that is that a man will never consistently perform to a level higher than he sees himself. My goal today is by the time we're done that you will have a clearer vision of who you are and whose you are. And the way I'm going to do that is I want to tell my story, which is also, I'm hoping, to be your story. And I'm going to disclose for you the secret of life. That's something to look forward to. I'm going to issue a challenge and give you a gift. But as I start my story, it's less about an elephant and it's more about a variation of the blind squirrel. And everybody knows that the blind squirrel occasionally gets an acorn, but what would happen to that squirrel if it actually received its eyesight again? How many acorns would that squirrel find? And that's, as I sit before you, I really feel that's my life, is I'm finding a lot of acorns. And it's not because of being a smarter squirrel. I've just had the lights turned back on. So I want to start with a little background. I've been married for 39 years to the co-founder of Leading with Power. And she is the music of my life. Shut the camera. She's courageous and steadfast, and she cares about what's going on here with you. She truly is invested and proud of you for being here. And I asked her, I said, Terry, what do you want me to tell the boys? And she said, well, just tell them that I haven't been that difficult to you. I just give you enough trouble to make life interesting. We also are parents of 5 of courageous and inspirational adult children. 3 of them Terry gave birth to. 2 of them have other mamas that married our children, and we're proud of all of them. And I do have a 31-year-old talented, bright, intelligent, beautiful daughter who's not married. So I wanted to say, any of you guys in your 30-somethings out there that have your act together, see me. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. How do I know if I have my act together? Well, it's my daughter, so let me decide that. Right? So for 33 years, it's been my honor and privilege to represent the Dukersheim family from Glen, Florida, some of the finest people you'll ever want to meet, and the employees of Artisans, and representing them across Wisconsin, the Midwest, nationwide. And I figured it out. I've probably sold over $50 million worth of t-shirts and sweatshirts, which equates to over 1 million t-shirts and sweatshirts. And the company was really recently sold to the employees, which is a credit to the character of the man that owned it and that I was proud to represent and still do. And I know it'd be inappropriate to use this platform to make an appeal for additional screen printing and embroidery business, so I won't do that. And I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but 5 years ago when I turned 55, and most men were thinking about retirement, I prayed a prayer of availability. And I'm realizing how profound that prayer really was and still seeing the impact. And I want to give a special shout out to what I call the secondhand lions, and you know who you are. If you don't, it's guys my age, maybe a little bit younger and older, who have seen some things, they've been through some stuff, and I just want to applaud you, affirm you, and thank you for being a part of this. You're inviting your sons, you're inviting your grandsons, and by just being here, you're proving you're still teachable, and there's still plenty to be done, and you're willing to do it. So I just wanted to give you a hats off on that. So 5 years ago, we were involved in helping start a company that now provides long-term care to people with Alzheimer's and dementia. We have 4 facilities around the country, around the state, and hundreds of families going through the worst journey of their lives with their loved ones with Alzheimer's and dementia, and providing employment for hundreds of people. And then about the same time, 5 years ago, is when the seeds for Leading with Power, it's the clearest vision that I've ever had. All I had to do, he made it simple, all I had to do is follow directions. And you are the fruits of that. There are now 4 locations, LaCrosse, Wausau, Des Moines, and you own that. Every one of those cities, men and leaders have been to one of our functions. They've seen your support, your enthusiasm, and they have decided to launch out on their own, and they're going spectacularly. I wish I could tell you, I was on the phone with Tony Zach last night, and he was lit up. And they had John McHugh, the corporate communications director of Quick Trip, as their speaker yesterday. He's coming here in May, and it was phenomenal. And the latest, biggest news I can tell you is there's a very serious effort and every likelihood that Madison will be online in September of 2017. You did that. God did that. You did that. And more recently, I had a new motto. It's DMCS. This is just in the last couple of years, which stands for Do More Crazy Stuff. What? An example of that, just recently I took my grandkids roller skating, and I just decided that instead of taking them roller skating, I was going to roller skate with them, which turns out it was a good thing I did it then. And that was just a little extra edge to get out there and skate with them. Last year, I sang on a float in the Eau Claire Christmas Parade with the Eau Claire Children's Theater. If you've ever heard me sing, you know how crazy that is. More recently, doing the Ironman triathlon, and I have the tattoo to brag about and show it, which both qualify for that. One of the lessons I learned that I want to share from that, someday I want to give you a whole session on just the lessons learned on the Ironman, but one of the lessons is the hardest lessons to learn are the ones we think we already know, right? So, well, that's been a lot about me. I wanted to talk about you. So, what do you think about me? That's my favorite line. So, I am a squirrel that has regained his sight. I am not, however, a woodpecker. You know the story of the woodpecker pecking away at the great giant redwood tree in California, making no progress whatsoever. And lightning comes and splits the tree in half, knocks the woodpecker to the ground. He's passed out. When he finally comes to, he looks up and goes, "Look what I did." I'm not a woodpecker. I understand that I made myself available. God is doing His work, and He's allowing me to come along for the ride. So I want to just tell you a couple more stories about my background for your benefit. And starts off with the fact that I grew up in the home of an alcoholic father. We were a dysfunctional family. We didn't know what those terms meant. We didn't know that was our normal, right? I could go into detail on that, but those of you that know that route, you have your own horror stories to tell, and I don't want to unearth anything else, and it would not be honoring to my father. But John Eldridge, in his excellent book, Wild at Heart, which I highly recommend, makes this statement: every boy comes into the world with one question that only his father can answer, is, do I have what it takes to be a man? And when that answer is not answered properly by dad, you can end up like you would have with me, with a young man, a young boy, with a chip on his shoulder, mad at the world, with something to prove because he has something to hide. But I want to draw the lessons out of that. And the first one is, if anything like that, just a show of hands up for a minute, how many of you know for certain that right now as you sit here, you're living with the blessing of your Father? Just a quick hand, just quick hands. Know for sure. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. If that's not the case, the first lesson that I want to pass along is the importance of forgiveness. My leg was tied to the rope until I was able to come to forgive my father and not see him as the enemy, but as a victim of the enemy. And he was dead by that time, but I had to still process that forgiveness. And maybe for you it's not your dad, maybe it's your mom, maybe it's an ex-wife, maybe it's a business partner, maybe it's an employee, a kid. But the importance of forgiveness is profound. And unforgiveness and bitterness I've heard described beautifully as it's like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. And some of you that have not forgiven someone in your life, I'm not telling you anything new, but you're incapable of doing it. And the reason for that is, and we're going to talk about it here in a little while, is unless you have been forgiven at a deep and profound level yourself, you can't forgive someone else. You have no basis, you have no understanding to extend forgiveness until you have received it. And that may be the problem. The second lesson is, what a golden opportunity to end generational sin and dysfunction, to take responsibility, draw a line in the sand and say, from this day forward, no more. And the encouragement on that is that you can learn what it takes to be a husband and a father and a leader. And the fact that you're even here is proof of that, and your interest in learning and your desire to learn. Second part of my background was I grew up as a religious hypocrite, which when I wrote that it sounded harsh, when I say it sounded harsh, and how could a little 8th grade altar boy be a religious hypocrite? And it's not that unusual. It's the only result possible with religion. It always will end up in hypocrisy, and I need to define that because I don't want you to misunderstand that. But any school of teaching that tells us that somehow we can make ourselves worthy of God's love, that we can earn our salvation if we do enough rituals, if we go through enough motions, anything like that where the reliance is on our ability to reach back to God, is always going to end in hypocrisy because it has no power to change the heart. None. So when we say that Leading with Power is not a religious organization, we absolutely mean that. And I would even go farther. We're an anti-religious organization, and I don't want you to misunderstand that. I realize there's a potential to misunderstand that, so I came up with this analogy or this picture, and I learned it from my Ironman experience. Unfortunately, I dealt with drowning a lot, or the concept of drowning. And the analogy is this, that a drowning man does not need a swimming instructor. He needs someone to rescue him. And the best that can be hoped for from religion is it comes to the side of the pool and says, swim! Swim! If I could swim, I wouldn't be drowning. And that's the difference. We are pro-Jesus, we are pro-faith, we are pro-church, but I want to give a special shout out now to the lost boys. And you know who you are. You've been disconnected, disillusioned. Every man I talk to, almost every man I talk to, has a legitimate church wound. that has caused them to separate, isolate, get out of the game. And I want to encourage you. You're not going to like the solution, but I just want to tell you, you got to get over it. You got to get reconnected, and you got to get on with it. Again, the only one you're hurting is yourself. And if we can be that support, if you can connect here, that's a great start. You're sure welcome to do that. And there again, forgiveness might be the key issue. So then the third thing is a lot more fun, and it really represents a city. Kansas City has been a huge place in my life. Both of these things happened about 35 years ago. One was a year before the other. And Jim, I was thinking about the fact you probably paid for this trip that I went on to Kansas City. It was a YMCA training event. And I heard Louis Timberlake speak. He was the president of the National Chamber of Commerce. He spoke for an hour. I heard one thing. That one thing changed my life forever. And he said this: anybody that's anybody was nobody until they had a written plan for their life. That set the foundation for everything good that happened after that. A room this size, I understand there will be about 5 or 6 guys that will take that to heart. But you 5 or 6 guys will turn the world upside down. And I wish that statistic was higher, but I just throw that out there because that began a journey that then culminated about a year later. And I was at a business training event, and the squirrel regained his sight. And I was in the process at that time. Nobody would have known this, but I know for sure I was in the process of destroying all the family that I had just bragged about. I would have certainly been divorced at the least. I would not know my grandkids. Some of my kids would not have been born. And I'm certain of it. And if you looked at my life from the outside, you would not have known that. But I know for sure that's true. Instead of learning the lessons from my father of what not to do, I was following in his footsteps. I was looking for answers, but I thought that it was still my responsibility to try to find God. And the pastor on the stage, he used a flower from a flower pot. I'm going to use this bookmark. All of you newcomers today, this is our free gift to you. I want you to take that off the table, even now, take it. There should be some rustling, there should be a little noise. And the pastor on the stage talked about God's gift of salvation as just that, it's a free gift. There's nothing you can do to earn it, but you must receive it. If you leave your bookmark on the table, you have not received the gift. Plus, everything I'm telling you is outlined here, and if you understand this, this would be the greatest gift I could ever give you. And I received it. And the lights came on for the blind squirrel. I used to be what they call a lay lector at a local church. It was my job to stand up and read the scriptures to the people. I had not clue one what I was talking about. I'd sit down, and neither did they. And from that moment on, from when I received this free gift of God's salvation, the lights came on. What I learned later, the Holy Spirit, who is the power behind leading with power, came into me, and I read all the way back from Kansas City, and it came alive like a love letter to me. And I invite you to take that seriously. The gateway to power, the gateway to salvation, the gateway to God only comes through the door of humility. Some people use the word brokenness. Some like to say surrender. Repentance is a great word, to recognize your need to be forgiven, which is your foundation to be able to forgive others. But keep in mind, and even as I say this right now, some of you are fighting a war of pride right now. Your pride, my pride, will do battle to the death to prevent you from responding to this message. It will rear its head daily and constantly. It can't be that simple. It's got to be something you can do. It's got to be up to you. You've got to earn it. You're an American, for goodness sakes. And until you are willing and ready and able to come to that place of surrender, submission, repentance, humility, at that moment is when God's power can come out and demonstrate itself. If you want to do a fun exercise sometime, write down the things on a piece of paper that really matter to you. And then ask yourself, how many of these am I in total control of? It's eye-opening. We need God's help. We need each other. The things that matter to us, our relationships, our health, our future, our eternity, are not in our control. And I just invite you, encourage you, plead with you to respond to that, to weigh that, to think that over. Don't think too hard, too long, because then that's when your pride stands up and said, we'll figure this out. Ignore what he's saying. So I'm going to move on now, but it's the same message. I promised on the poster to disclose to you the secret of life. Once one discovers the secret of life, it's only decent of them to share it with other people, right? This is one of the biggest acorns I have recently discovered. Before I tell you what the secret of life is, though, I have to tell you some of its imposters, some of the motivations. The secret of life that I'm going to share with you is I know the motivation at the core level of every man in this room, without exception. That's pretty big information. Once you understand that, you can manage your life. You can see whose you are and who you are and act accordingly, right? But there are some imposters. Number one is that our motivation is the pursuit of money. The whole get what you can what you get, and sit on the can. Greed and envy are the two sides of the same coin of materialism. Rockefeller was asked, how much is enough? And his answer was, just a little bit more. Just an observation, in my experience, men of influence have a far less problem with this. Most of the guys I meet that have means and wherewithal have a sense of stewardship and understanding of the responsibility they have. It's under attack in America today, achievements under attack, incentive is under attack, but in my experience, there aren't a lot of greedy, successful people that I've had interaction with. There's far more who have less, but are still obsessed with the envy of others. Either way, it's off track, right? And it's going to be a motivation that's going to leave us empty. A second motivation is sex. You knew that was going to come up, right? We're told the lie that manhood is to be a sexual conqueror. My friend Brian said something 2 weeks ago when we were riding in the car that I just thought is so cool and so true and kind of funny. He quoted a friend of his that said, you know, if it wasn't for a woman, a man wouldn't do anything. And I thought maybe that's an exaggeration, but it might be closer to the truth than we'd like to admit. I want to tell you two quick stories. I met my wife Terry in a bar in LaCrosse. It was right around St. Patrick's Day. My pickup line was, Terry, are you Irish? I am smooth and I am sharp. And I knew her name was Terry because it said it on her jacket, her cheerleading jacket from high school. She was wearing it and it said her name on it. That's a freshman mistake she's been paying for 40 years. That weekend I was playing in a basketball tournament. They used to have, I went to UW-LaCrosse, and UW-LaCrosse was hosting the championships of all the winners of the intramural basketball teams of all the state university schools. So it's kind of a big deal. It's pretty cool. I invited her Friday night to come watch me play basketball. And she showed up. And I put on a show. Literally, I dribbled over right in front of where she was sitting and just started. Fortunately, when we changed ends and she had to see me playing defense on the other end, it was not as great a show. But we won the tournament. And they had 12 trophies, and we only had 9 guys. So I took her out for dinner that night. I got an extra trophy from the award ceremony, and I gave it to her, and she literally is my trophy wife. Boy, I worked hard for that one, Richie. One more story, and I'm sure you have your own stories. Tom, you'll appreciate this. I took a 3-credit running class. Dr. Phil Eston was doing his doctorate work, and he wanted to compare specificity training with traditional track training. It involved doing a pre-test of your max VO2, which means that they strap you up so all the air that you breathe out goes into a bag, and then they measure how efficient you are with it. Then for 10 weeks, we ran our butts off. Best shape of my life. We're doing the post-test. The way they do it is they put you on a treadmill, they start speeding it up, and then they start raising the incline until you say, enough. Well, I'm ready to give out. I mean, I'm done, right? In a freshman kinesiology class that was 75% women walk into the kinesiology lab. Guess I wasn't done. Until they left. The third counterfeit is power. Control, I've discovered, is pride's handyman. Right? You don't know a proud man until you hear him bragging about himself, or you see somebody that needs to control everything. And that's a pretty good indication of what's going on. And you've run into people who are in love with the title and their position, that always want to be in charge or always in control and suck all the oxygen out of the room. And I thought of a picture. First of all, if you run into a man like that, you can be rest assured that he's covering up something, some insecurity. And the other thing that I realized is, first of all, before we're too high and holy, every one of us are influenced by the pursuit of money and materialism. Every one of us have made mistakes and been distracted because of our sexual misadventures. Every one of us, want to be in control and we share all of this together. But here's what happens in life. Picture Miss Pac-Man. We go through life chewing up relationships, chewing up people, because there's something missing inside of us that we need to fill. And there is no relationship, there's no spouse, there's no kids, there's no business partner, there's no mistress or girlfriend or kid, employees, bosses that are ever going to fill that hole that we want to be filled. So here's the secret of life. Every man's motivation is to be faithfully loved. That's what drives all of us. We want to be cared about. We want to be loved. We want to be consistently loved. We want to be known. We want it to be reliable, trustworthy, consistent. And the beauty of this is that only Jesus, who created us, is able to fill that because he put it there. And until we get that relationship right, we're going to be constantly restless, constantly not at peace, and we're always going to be looking to what I can get from somebody else to fill this great need I have. And the beauty of it is when you come to faith in Jesus, God says, I will never leave you or forsake you. I have given you all you need for life and godliness. I've removed your sin as far as the east is from the west. I'm making a mansion for you right now. He's with us, he's with us, he's with us. And when we get that right, the world comes alive, the squirrel can see, and I just encourage you and urge you to make that decision. And you're going to wonder, why does this matter? Why do I care about this? We care about this at Leading with Power for many reasons. First of all, your eternal fate is hinged on that. Your short-term success is hinged on that. And I'm going to tell you another secret, is we have a vision at Leading with Power of what it is we're trying to accomplish, and we need all hands on deck. We have a common mission. Leading with power is not new. Leading with power has been going on for 2,000 years. And you have great bloodlines. There are revolutionaries in your bloodlines. Jesus was, if nothing else, was a revolutionary. Peter and John in Acts 4, when they're changing the world and they're healing people and people are being added to the church, the religious leaders of the day looked at that, scratched their head and go, who are these idiots? They have not been to our school. All they could conclude is they had been with Jesus. In Acts 17, Paul and Silas are some of our forefathers, and I love this, and I want this to be the hallmark of leading with power. This is our mission. This is the vision of leading with power. When the people of the city found out that Paul and Silas had come to their town, this is what they said. The men who have turned the world upside down have come to our city. That's our calling. It's not to be bored. It's not to fill a seat. It's not to have a tip of the hat relationship with God. That's what I used to have. You know, go in, God should be glad I showed up for church. Throw $5 in the offering. Don't spend it all in one place. Give God a little something for the effort. And then go live like hell the other 6 days of the week. And wonder, think about this. If your children treated you that way, how would you feel? I hope that brings it home. So that's the secret. And my challenge that I want to conclude is this. You and I are either going to fully trust God or we're going to rely on ourselves. And if we partially trust God, we're fully relying on ourselves. And I want to tell you a closing story. Partial obedience is disobedience. Delayed obedience is disobedience. And I learned this from my dog. We had a Springer for 15 years. He was the greatest pet. He would have been a good hunter, Jim, but nobody took him hunting. And he would run with me. We ran through the West Hill of Chippewa for years and years and years. And here's how it went. I would run. I would say, stay. He would sit. I'd cross the street. I'd look both ways. I would call him, and he would come, and we did this block after block after block, year after year after year, until one day. And I said, sit. And he sat. I started to cross. I looked both ways. I turned around to call him. He was sniffing on the hydrant. He was up at the bushes of the house. He was peeing on the front porch post. And by the way, we do that, don't we? And by the time he decided to come, I heard a screech of the tires, a car coming that had to slam on its brakes, and it slid to within this much of my beautiful English Springer. And that's when I learned how dangerous it is to wait, how dangerous it is to try to figure it out for ourselves, and how deadly that can really be. And so I learned that from my lesson from my dog, and I pass that on to you. So that's my challenge to you. Are you going to completely trust God, or are you going to continue to partially trust Him and rely on yourself? So we've heard a story. I've told you my secret. I've issued my challenge. And I promised you a gift. And I just want to explain what I did, and then we're going to be done. In preparing for this, which was exciting, and thank you for being here, and I'm so proud of you and so excited, and I wish I could just sit at every table and we could just chat. I just prayed and I asked God, I said, God, I want to just ask you to use my mind, my heart, my pen for you to write your blessing for these men. And as close as I'm humanly capable, that's what came here. And I know this is not going to be for everybody, but out of respect for the people that it is for, I'm just going to ask you to shut your eyes and bow your head. And it's only going to take me a minute to read this, and you'll get out of here on time. But just receive this from the heart of where it came from, your Heavenly Father. First of all, know that I love you. No, really. Not the you that could be or should be, but the you that is. Your mistakes didn't surprise me and certainly didn't cause me to stop loving you. Be sure of that. Guard that truth because it is the power of your life. I have a purpose for you and know it's not too late. It is uniquely yours, and I'm excited to guide you to it and through it. I promise it'll be the greatest adventure of your life. In it, you will discover that yes, you do have what it takes to be a man, because I put it in you. My son, pay attention to what I say. Listen carefully to my words. Don't lose sight of them. Let them penetrate deep into your heart, for they bring life to those who find them and healing to their whole body. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. I didn't put you here in the Chippewa Valley to play Trivial Pursuit. If you are bored, it is because you are not at war. Remember, though, we do not fight like they do. We win with grace and compassion and courage. We give mercy and, yes, forgiveness. If you choose pride and unforgiveness, you will reap frustration and bitterness, and my power will be limited in you. If you feel alone, look around. That's why you're here. There are many men that want what you want and need what you need. My friend, you are truly called and equipped to turn the world upside down so that many will see the reality and life-changing power of my love. Their lives will be changed and my kingdom will advance on your watch and mine by my power in you. You don't need to be like everyone or anyone else. I just need you to be fully alive in who I made you to be. I told you I would never leave you or forget you, and I meant it. Stop. Take a breath. Forget for a moment all that has gone on in the past. It has brought you to today, the only day that matters. Let me be your power today, and tomorrow we will change the world together. Let it be so.